You're listening to Driving Performance, your go-to podcast for unmatched expertise in the world of buying and selling an automotive dealership. Each episode features discussions with industry leaders and is brought to you by Performance Brokerage Services, North America's premier, family-owned automotive dealership brokerage firm with over 30 years of experience. We're here to ensure you gain the most reliable insights to confidently navigate a transaction and accomplish your unique goals. Whether you're looking to buy or sell, we prioritize building lasting relationships and maximizing the value beyond the transaction level. Here are your hosts, Jamie Farley and Paul Keckney, for another segment of Shifting Gears.
Welcome to Driving Performance. Today, we are in for a treat as we sit down with one of the most influential figures in the automotive dealership world. Rob Cochran has not only led #1 Cochran Automotive Group to tremendous success, but has also played a pivotal role in shaping the future of the industry. Whether you're a seasoned dealer or looking to grow your business, or simply curious about the inner workings of a major dealership group, Rob's insights are invaluable.
We're thrilled to have Rob Cochran, Chairman and CEO of #1 Cochran Automotive Group. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be with both of you.
So Rob, congratulations again on being named Vice Chairman for NADA for 2025. That's a big deal. How did the opportunity come about exactly? And what does it mean for you personally and professionally?
Well, the opportunity, it's come out. I've been on the board for 6 years now with NADA. I've enjoyed my time. I've had the opportunity to brainstorm and think about bigger picture topics that are facing the industry. I've had a lot of involvement with OEMs and OEM executives in my role the last 3 years as chair of industry relations. So a lot of good work, satisfying pursuit of partnerships with the OEMs. They're actually, as I think back on the process, I've enjoyed a very good relationship with some of the past chairs of NADA that have encouraged me and had encouraged me through the process. And so that's really how it all started. And second part of your question, my personal standpoint, it's certainly quite an honor. It's an honor to represent NADA and have the opportunity over these next few years, this next year, working with Tom Castriota, and then the following year when I'm hopefully able to move into the chair role. It comes at such a pivotal time in the industry with so many seismic forces and variables that are potentially shaping auto retail for the next 5 and 10 and 15 years. So it's exciting. I think there's a lot for us to do and focus on. So I'm just looking forward to being part of that process.
That's great.
So Rob, if you look back in time, when you took the dealer group over and you started to grow, at what point did you come up with a strategy to grow to the size you are now? Was there a moment in time where you really had a vision?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say first that we've never pursued size simply to pursue size. Going way back in time, I've had people that would say, well, how many stores do you want to have, or how much revenue do you want to generate, or what? And we had used a strategy in geographically insulated markets, defined geography, Western Pennsylvania, and over the last few years, Northeastern Ohio into the Youngstown market. And how can we serve the people of that geography with the product, selection of services. So that's really what the strategy is. And it's built around a brand name that means something in those markets. And it's built around a culture that means something to the team members that are part of it. That's what makes sense for us. And it really has always made sense, even, when I first started, because while we were only one store at that time, we were recognized in the market, for sales volume and for credibility and reputation and all those good things. So it was taking that, and through certainly good times and bad times, but taking that thought and that vision and extrapolating it over many years.
Rob, can you take us back a little bit when you started in the business? I think I read that you started right after you graduated from college. Was that the case? And what was it like for you stepping into the family business?
I did. I was, as I grew up, and I share this story, as I grew up as a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, I was not one that was out watching cars and doing things that oftentimes second generation or third generation found themselves doing. I had a bit of an aversion early on to the industry. I think some of that was what I perceived of the industry, and my father never being home and working, what the reputation, at least from some, might have been, back in the 80s when I was growing up. And so that changed dramatically when I was in college and I started working in the summers. It changed dramatically, actually, a summer when I was selling. And I realized I did very well selling vehicles, and I realized it was really just connecting and building a relationship, and that relationship aspect has always appealed to me. So I came back right after I graduated college. I was 21. I started, I think, 3 days after commencement. Nowadays, it seems like kids could go on international travel for several months after their commencements, but I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy that level of flexibility. So I started, and then, as luck or misfortune would have it, my father fell ill within a few years of me being there. So he had to back off, and then he ended up passing away a few years after that. So a whole lot came at me very, very early, learning the industry, learning the people, and just dealing with so much. And so it was trial by fire, working with a brand name at the time in our market that was well known, and not wanting to screw it up and feeling the burden of that. So there was a lot in there, but as everybody likes to say, as you're strengthened by those, my resilience, I think, was crystallized. You're strengthened by those times. I was able to work with a lot of very good people in that process. And it became clear to me that period of time in the early 90s, mid 90s, that sort of that initial burst of dealer rooftop expansion, if you will, it made sense to me that we could become that as we went forward. And so that's over time, that's what we pursued. But it's been a great ride. I'm very, very fortunate. As I think back, it was an interesting start. It was challenging, but because of the way that I started, it really broadened my perspective and enabled me to learn a whole lot very, very quickly. And so I'm grateful for that.
Rob, what advice do you have for a dealer that's got 2-3 stores that maybe has a vision for 10 or 12? What advice would you give them that's maybe some of the pitfalls that you've come through yourself?
Well, the advice is always around, I'd say it's around people, aligning yourself with the right people. That, I think, that goes unsaid. It's critical that you're able to get aligned with the right people. I'd also say, if you get 2 or 3 and you want 8 or 10 or whatever it is, I would ask yourself, why? Why do you want to do it? What is it that how are you going to make things better in the market, or improve things for the customer, or make it better for the people you're working with, or something? It should not simply be to make more money. There has to be some greater calling, I believe, that you should be. So, boy, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity here for me to do a better job for our customers, or maybe bring better quality people into the organization if we do this. Something around that versus just seemingly thinking, well, this is easy. It's working with 2. If I have 6, it's just going to be 3 times better, and I'll just sit back. And to me, it's not. That's not really where it starts.
Great point.
So, Rob, in the beginning, you mentioned that you're seeing some seismic shifts in the industry. Can you elaborate on that? What do you see?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's pressures on the OEMs. We know there's pressures. You're seeing it right now, right, with different different ambiguity with some of them as far as what they might look like in 12 months or 24 months, with many of these longstanding OEMs that all of us have dealt with. And so I think the pressure began with the EV and the EV requirements and the capital allocation that so many of these OEMs had to divert to EVs, and then this disjointment, if you will, with customer demand and the trajectory of the customer demand. And then so many of the customers saying, we're not fully on board the EV train quite yet. Some of them are, but we want more options with hybrids. We might want to stay in combustion engine vehicles for longer, requiring the OEMs to not get away from those investments as quickly or to divert more capital. So it's straining. I think it's straining many of them, which as they feel strained, their dealers feel strained. And then the geopolitical landscape with the Chinese impacting the industry in Europe and in South America and in other parts of the world, and even for so many of the legacy automakers we've dealt with, that the Chinese market drying up for them. That has impact again on the OEMs, on their scale, on their global forecast and expectations. And as that is impacted, their dealers in the U.S. are impacted, because we're all part of the same team. We're all part of the same ecosystem. So I think there's a whole lot to play out there, and we don't know how it's going to play out. There's many forces, but that's something that certainly we need to watch and observe and try to help maybe shepherd the best we can from our position. And then beyond that, the technology, not just in what we're selling. Certainly the EVs are going to continue to accelerate. There could be other types of vehicles that come out that we need to be familiar with. But even in, so not just in what we're selling, but in how we're selling it, the digital transformation, the digitization of our industry. There was a burst during the COVID period that has settled. But I think anybody that doesn't think that the shopping pattern or the shopping behavior isn't going to continue to evolve over 3, 5, 7 years, anybody that doesn't think that, I think, is foolish. So we have to be up to speed there. And then where artificial intelligence goes and how that impacts many of the functions that we've historically handled, and the speed of how quickly that's changing. I'll tell myself, just understanding with artificial intelligence and how it is accelerating. So again, sometimes I think people that when we've been doing this a long time and there's been these other trends and like, well, I heard about this trend and that trend and this trend, and it didn't materialize like they said it would. And so I'll worry about that when it comes. But the speed of acceleration with artificial intelligence, I think if there's not an openness from a retailer standpoint, a retail organization standpoint, if there's not an openness to, boy, this is going to help influence and shape how we do things, it's going to come so quickly that there potentially is not time to react. So we better be thinking about it now, because there's a lot of smart people and there's a whole lot of capital that is being invested in that space to change things. So the change is going to have impacts on how we do things.
Just from a personal level, I feel like I'm hearing of a new AI technology every single day. So it is happening so very quickly. Mm-hmm. But I appreciate you going into those shifts. I mean, I think, Paul and I feel you're definitely spot on with those. As you head into your role in 2025 with NADA, how are you going to maybe figure out what you want to try to tackle? And if you don't mind sharing with us, do you have any big goals in mind?
Well, my goal for 2025 really is to learn. The vice chair role, which I'll be stepping into, is to continue to learn and work and support Tom Castriota, who will be moving into the chairman role. I'm excited about helping and supporting Tom with what he really, with other support will. He'll be the one identifying, here's where we want to focus. I suspect it will be on some of those larger issues that we've already spoken about, but it's ultimately Tom's call. I'm going to be looking to learn. I've had extensive experience with in the IR front with all the OEMs and all the ones that we represent, but we have a big advantage because of our relationships with so many. So I'll be looking to build upon that. I'll also be looking to brush up further on the legislative and the regulatory issues that I've been involved with. And then there's other parts of NADA that I can, I need to get further up to speed on in my tutorial.
Rob, clearly you've had a lot of success from the business perspective, but on a personal note, any achievement that really stands out that you could share with our audience that that you're really proud of?
I would say that first, it's easy to say family. I'm certainly proud of my family, and I've been blessed and had good fortune to have a diversion through so much through the ups and through the downs of being in their lives. And so that's been very, very important to me. Christina, my wife, and I, with 5 children, they're now in their 20s, and they're involved to varying degrees. They're involved with our business and where it goes in the future. So that's fun and that's rewarding. And beyond that, I'd point to team members and people that we have. We're getting ready for a holiday luncheon. We bring all people together, which is a little crazy. Now 35 stores, 1,800 people, and other than a skeleton crew tomorrow afternoon in the various stores, all of those team members will be in one location for a luncheon.
Wow.
And we do it, and the logistics are not easy, but it's really a powerful cultural moment for us to bring everybody together and to celebrate people and to hand out awards and to do all those things. So we're proud of that. Just the relationships that are formed over so many years. There's people that have been with our company 50 years. We're celebrating 2 tomorrow that have been with us for 40 years. To me, that's what's maybe most gratifying is being around people, seeing them hopefully fulfill their goals and being aligned for a long period of time. That's what's most rewarding for me in this journey.
Well, question. I mean, it's very rare to hear a story like that. 40 years, 50 years working for the same organization, especially, being a former car dealer myself, where your employees who are being poached or potentially poached on a regular basis. What have you done culturally to attract people to stay?
Well, there's no magic button. We have people poached as well, and we have to ask ourselves, how effectively are we creating team member engagement? And the reality is, with some, we do a really effective job, and with others, not effective enough. And that, as you grow, much of that falls down on the development of the people in the different departments and the different stores to lead and not just manage by the numbers. You need to lead people and create engagement. And that's not always easy, because it's certainly easy for us to focus on how many units were rolled and how's our service business versus target. But we can't forget the human aspect of it, because the human aspect is what creates the team member retention in our case. So it's an elusive quest. There are plenty of times where we scratch our head and say, boy, we didn't do this as well as we could or should. But I think, I think in large part with the success stories, we've created relationships. We've created loyalty in those relationships with those team members, and we're grateful for it. There's no other thing. There's no magic bullet. It's creating relationships with those people so they feel like they're part of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So Rob, you mentioned that you got thrown in at a pretty early age, having to run everything after your dad passed away. If you reflect back, and I think this might be helpful for our listeners too, if you don't mind sharing, is there one mistake that maybe you made earlier on in your career that, looking back, you're actually thankful that you made? Because it sounded like you had to take on a lot at an early age.
Well, I did. I made a lot of mistakes. First of all, it wasn't one mistake. I made mistake and mistake and mistake, and I'm still making mistakes. That's part of. I think that's part of a good culture is to encourage risk taking and a boldness to where we're seeking something, and it may not always work. So that's kind of part of who we are as an organization. I think there were times earlier in my career where I was not as authentic as I was not as authentic to myself as I needed to be. Meaning that I was trying to. I thought, well, this needs to, this requires more of a tough guy leadership. Pound their hand on the desk and not put up with things. And that, candidly, that's not really me. So as I tried those things during different periods of time and may not have gotten the right response, I think the lesson to me was we all have sort of an authentic way about us. And in order to connect with people, that authenticity needs to show through whatever that is about us. And so I think that was my discovery. Not that I don't get upset and get irritated, but if I do it in my way and not in some other person.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that message of being your authentic self. Also taking risks, because if you're guarded and you're operating as an employee in kind of an environment where you are fearful of trying new things, then you're holding yourself back, and that's ultimately going to hold the organization back. So being able to be in an environment where you can take those risks and it's okay to fail sometimes, that's going to bring out the best in everyone.
It is. And again, we have cases where we do that really well. And we have other areas where we're not, that messaging isn't getting through as clearly as we need to. So we are far, far from perfect, and we can improve a lot. And it also is challenged as you grow. We've grown so much in the last 2 years. So there are so many new team members that we have. And that's a hard for somebody that might have been with another organization for 15 years or whatever. Now they're coming in here. It takes time for them to understand what that feels like and acts like. So we're in that process with many of our new team members.
So question for you, as we look into 2025, I'm sure you've been doing some forecasting internally. What are you looking at for 2025? Do you see growth? Do you see much change? Anything concerning in the industry?
We would expect that we're going to sell more, 4%, 5%, 6%. We expect sales to be up. We have certain opportunity brands and others, other brands that may not bring as much opportunity, but in a whole, we would say increases. We expect to sell more used vehicles, although we know that there's challenges with availability with used vehicles. So we have to be smarter, more aggressive in going to find those used vehicles to source the improvement in volume. So yeah, we think there's a lot of positive signs. We have to keep inventories in check, and I hope, from my standpoint, from a dealer standpoint, I hope that the OEMs in the ecosystem don't get caught up in the overproduction focus, because that's not good for our industry, and that's not good for the customers, and that's not good for the dealers. That's not good for any of us. So there's a little bit of maybe skepticism from my standpoint on how that might play out. I think the service and parts opportunities are there. I think that should continue to grow. So we're pretty bullish on what next year can bring in the years following.
Awesome.
Okay, so Rob, I loved your comments about don't just grow to grow. You have to know why, what you're really after, what your purpose is. And of course, there's all the people resources that are involved in that as well. What advice, aside from that, would you give to ambitious dealers who are looking to grow, especially in the year ahead in 2025? Any tips or recommendations?
Well, again, I would point to what's the strategy? Is it a geographic strategy like one that we historically had? Is it a strategy that's aligned with different OEMs? And, we have a great relationship with this OEM. So, we have 2 of their stores, and we can go acquire a third store in this market that might be a disparate market than the one that we're in. It may be a strategy that is dependent on retail partners. We're going to a different market and we're going to find a partner and put them in. There's a lot of different, there are different strategies. Which one makes sense for your, the organization? Which ones do we want to pursue? And then maybe don't be in a hurry. Try to create connections around that, and see how things play out. And don't get too high, and try not to get too low. And that, I think that's been what we've done over the years.
Great advice.
When you are looking at a potential acquisition, do you look at it and look wholly at past results? Do you look at opportunity? If it's a market you're already in, is there anything specific you like to look at when you're looking at a potential acquisition?
Well, we look at the fit into what we already have. And we made the decision to go into Ohio because it was gently expanding our geography. So that seemed to make sense. That we expanded our geography in a distinct market, but yet we can still get there. It's, from the northern parts of Pittsburgh, it's 45 minutes into that market. So it's easy for us to get there and to be there and to have that cohesiveness within our senior leadership team, to be there and to really have it operating as a number one Cochran store or groups of stores at this point. So that's always been important to us, and it's been important to me in how do we want to do it and create alignment between the stores in doing it that way. Now everybody's not like that, and I respect that. So that may not be important to everybody that is out there listening and saying, well, we're not concerned about how you do it. We just want to make sure it's done. So I get that. From our standpoint, because of the culture and the brand that we stand for, the consistency with execution and alignment of execution has always been something that's important. So that's kind of how we've gotten to where we've gotten to, and back to the acquisitions, what can complement that, maybe in a market that we're not yet in, or maybe with a brand that we either don't have or don't have a significant holding. May only have 1 store and we'd like to have 2 or 3 stores.
Makes sense.
Is there any one thing that keeps you up at night about the future of the automotive industry?
I don't know if I'm kept up at night. I think the biggest challenge for all of us, at least for me, is the ambiguity. And there's more. I think I've been doing this a long time. There's more ambiguity about the future because of the different variables that are out there. The OEMs, what they're going through, the products that we're selling are in a period of evolution. The technology that we spoke about with artificial intelligence is in a period of acceleration. So all these things, and they're going to collide to create a bunch of different scenarios over the next 5 or 10 years, and we have to be prepared to understand how our execution plays out, maybe in at least the most likely of the scenarios, or the top 3 or 4 scenarios or something. There's a multitude probably of scenarios that all could play out, but we just, the broader, the more that we're aligned with how things could or should play out, I think we're going to be better prepared. But it's hard to do that because, again, it's very hard to be able to say, well, this is how things are going to be in 4 or 5 years. Things could shift in any number of different directions, and in some cases they could ship pretty quickly. So we have to be prepared for that.
Rob, is there anything that we haven't asked you that you feel you might want to share with our listeners?
I think you've already asked this, but to me, those that drive our industry, we have it's really something to be part of this industry, and the legacy of families across the country that have been in this industry for a generation, 2 generations, 3, 4, in some cases 5 generations. That's amazing, and that's humbling. So we should all be proud of that. And it's interesting to me, certainly there's transition within the retail ranks, but there's still the vast majority of dealerships are still owned and operated by families.
Well, one thing I would agree with is, of course, I grew up washing cars at a Chevy store and ended up becoming a dealer years later. And I couldn't be more proud of being a former car dealer, but also still being in this industry that we absolutely love and admire. And to your point, there's so many in our industry that have family involved. Mark Shackelford, my partner and friend for 15 years, has now got his son working with him, and out there working with dealers that have sons and grandsons. I mean, it is a fabulous industry that's so focused on family. Even if it's not your immediate family, you kind of become family, right?
You do. Part of this balance between the retailers and the OEMs, if you really think about it, while the OEMs are the ones that should be looking further out into the stratosphere as far as how things play out in 5 and 7 and 10 years, and they're doing that with the capital allocation to product. It's really the retailers and the dealers that are the ones that are the permanent in the system. The OEMs and their leadership will rotate in 5 years, 7 years, and maybe a little bit longer in a good case. And yet the families that have really been the backbone of commerce in the U.S. have, somebody's in for a 20-year stint, 25-year stint, 30-year stint, and then the next person or the next group of people come in for a stint to that level. So to me, the long-term nature of our investment of time from all these families across the country, it's really a cool thing to be part of, and it's humbling to be part of. So that's, I don't really have a question. It's just, I think we should all realize the specialness and the uniqueness of what we participate in.
You're raising a really good point, because you have a dealer that comes in and maybe it's a family business and he takes over and it's a 25, 30-year stint. He's trading someone else just like him to take over and do another 25 or 30-year stints. So it really is the continuum of one family sometimes for 100 years, as we know. Well, I think we got a lot of great information here. This has been great. What else do we want to say, Jamie?
No, I can just wrap it up. So, Rob, congratulations to you again, and continued success in 2025. And we loved having you on today. So thank you.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Okay. It was great. Thanks, Rob.
Absolutely.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Driving Performance. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave us a 5-star review. If you're considering buying or selling an automotive dealership, reach out to us at performancebrokerage-services.com or send an email to info@performancebrokerage-services.com.